She laughed at his boots, mocked his accent, rolled her eyes when he ordered black coffee instead of champagne. What she didn't know, Jason Statham owned the place. In a world dripping with money and masks, he walked in quietly, but the room shook the moment he did. Respect doesn't cost a thing, but some people can't afford it. She thought she was serving him a drink, but by the end of the night, he was the one serving her truth. It was a Thursday afternoon in downtown Los Angeles, where sunlight glanced off glass towers and the rich chased time with cocktails. Up above it all, perched on the 47th floor, sat a luxury rooftop restaurant named Verger, exclusive, elite, and dressed in gold leaf charm. But Jason Statham didn't walk in like he was part of it. He stepped through the sliding doors in worn boots, a plain black tee, and a leather jacket older than most of the guests sipping imported wine. No entourage, no fanfare, just the kind of quiet presence that turns heads without trying. He didn't come to be seen. He came to see, because Verger was his, not on paper, not as a name behind a check. Jason built it. Every wood grain, every line on the menu, every staff member who promised to treat strangers like royalty. That was the rule. That was the mission. But lately, things have felt off. Complaints, cold reviews, a shift in the tone that he couldn't quite name, but felt in the gut. So today, he left his identity at the door. No announcement, no manager heads up. Just him, a customer among customers. The host barely looked up as Jason gave his name. Statham, party of one. The host smirked faintly. Right. Okay, just wait here. Then walked off, clearly unconvinced. Jason didn't mind. But the first real impact came when Britt approached. She was young, mid-20s, expensive nails and a hairstyle that looked like it took 2 hours and a YouTube tutorial. She walked like the room owed her attention and talked like she'd swallowed a podcast. Her eyes did a full scan of Jason, from boots to brow, and she let out a breath like he'd just lowered her IQ by existing. Let me guess, she said, tapping her tablet. No reservation? Jason smiled just a little, got one under Statham. She raised an eyebrow. Uh-huh, right this way, sir. She led him past the good tables, the ones by the view, past candlelit corners and jazz soft booths, right to a tiny square table near the kitchen, where the only thing he could see was a staff door swinging every 3 seconds. There you go. 5-star view of the dishwasher. She didn't even wait to take his drink order. Just handed him a single menu, creased, and walked off. Jason sat calm, watching. Not just her, but the whole room. The vibe, the conversations, how the staff moved, how customers reacted. It didn't take long to see it. The people with watches worth rent got perfect smiles. Others, like the tired mother in the corner or the nervous man in a cheap blazer, were treated like they didn't belong. When Britt returned, she leaned on the chair beside him with practiced disinterest. You ready or still sounding out the wine list? Jason looked up. Just coffee. Black. She blinked. Seriously? Seriously. She gave a theatrical sigh. This is $300 a head place, and you're out here ordering diner fuel. Okay, 1 coffee. Anything else, Your Majesty? He didn't flinch. Not yet. She left again, muttering something under her breath that sounded like backwards hat energy. Jason didn't follow. Didn't bite. He just sat back and watched as a pattern unfolded. He saw the kitchen rush an undercooked steak for a rich client, while another guest waited 40 minutes for soup. He saw Britt roll her eyes at a woman asking for gluten-free options, only to turn and flash a fake smile when the woman's husband came back wearing a Rolex. There was a rot here, a slow, creeping one, not in the food, not in the walls, but in the culture. Jason had built this place with a promise that anyone, blue collar, white collar, no collar, could walk in and feel worthy. But somehow, without him watching, the heart had been replaced with hustle, the soul with status. And the person pouring that poison drop by drop, she was now walking back toward him, latte in hand, smirk locked in place. Didn't have black, so I brought oat. Hope that's not too exotic for you. Jason took the cup, nodded once. Thanks. That was all. No fire, no heat. But behind his eyes, a slow storm was building. He wasn't here for revenge. He wasn't here to embarrass her. He was here to witness. And when the moment came, she would remember exactly who she'd underestimated. The coffee sat untouched. Jason watched it cool while the restaurant swirled around him in curated perfection. Marble counters, glass chandeliers, laughter that sounded rehearsed. But underneath the sparkle, the current was turning sharp. Britt floated past his table again, but this time with sudden glow, her voice sweeter, her smile wider. 2 new guests had just arrived. A pair of social media influencers dressed in matching cream outfits, cameras already rolling. Britt turned on like a switch, practically skipping to greet them. Danny, Travis. Oh my God, you look amazing, she beamed, pulling out chairs and snapping selfies. Table by the window, obviously. Champagne. Jason watched the contrast like a man watching 2 lives unfold on separate screens. A few minutes ago, she had treated him like a stain on her shoes. Now, she was offering the royal treatment for people who knew how to work a ring light. Britt caught Jason's gaze mid-laugh, then looked away quickly. Her shoulders stiffened for a moment, then relaxed as she focused on the couple. Jason looked down at the menu again, though he already knew it by heart. He wasn't here to eat. He was here to see who was hungry for power and who had simply forgotten what service meant. After a while, Britt returned, her charm used up on her VIPs. Her face was back to neutral, then slightly annoyed when she saw Jason still seated, still calm, still sipping that oat milk coffee she hadn't even bothered to ask about. Still here, she said, voice low and dry. We do have a time limit, you know. Jason didn't answer. He set down the cup gently and asked, What's your special today? She laughed, loud enough for 2 nearby tables to hear. Oh, honey, don't worry about it. It's like wagyu tartare with saffron foam or something. Not really your thing. Trust me. He met her eyes. You don't think I'd like it? She smirked, crossed her arms. Let's just say it's more Forbes crowd and less Home Depot regular. No offense. Jason held the silence for a beat longer than she was comfortable with, then nodded once. Thanks for the honesty. She blinked, clearly unsure if he was serious or mocking her. She looked over her shoulder and laughed again, this time to a co-worker behind the bar. He asked about the tartare, she whispered loudly, shaking her head. It's like putting a T-bone in a vending machine. Jason heard it all. So did a young server nearby, Lena, thin and soft-spoken, who froze with a tray of plates in hand. She looked at Jason, then back at Britt, visibly torn. Jason offered Lena a kind glance, subtle and steady. A silent nod said, It's okay. I see it. Britt walked off again, clearly proud of her performance, muttering something that ended in middle of Beverly Hills dress like it's Trucker Tuesday. Jason sat there, alone in his corner, the city glowing behind him through 30-foot windows. He didn't blink, didn't move. He just watched her. A few minutes passed. Then, something unexpected. A different waiter approached, nervous, maybe new, carrying a fresh basket of bread and a polished smile. Sir, I noticed you didn't have silverware. I can also go over the specials if you'd like. Jason smiled. Appreciate it. But before he could say more, Britt swooped in like a storm cloud, eyes locked on the waiter. I got it, she snapped. Thanks. Then turned to Jason. Her voice dipped in syrup. Sorry, new hires. Can't let them go off script. Jason raised his eyebrows. Just slightly. He was doing a good job. She didn't respond. Instead, she leaned in close with a dry laugh. No hard feelings. It's just, when you've worked here long enough, you get good at reading people. And let's just say, I didn't exactly peg you as our ideal clientele. Jason leaned back, finally breaking the silence. And what would that be? She shrugged. You know, people who belong here. That was it. Not shouted, not screamed, just said plainly, like a truth she'd carried in her bones, like it was obvious. Jason gave the smallest smile. People who belong. She started to walk off again, triumphant, but behind her, Jason slowly stood up from his seat. No noise, no drama, just the quiet rise of someone who had heard enough. Jason moved to the back hall like a shadow, unseen but impossible to ignore. The staff corridor behind Verger's kitchen smelled like thyme and truffle oil, but Jason wasn't focused on food. He walked with purpose, straight toward the office marked management only. Inside, the general manager, Thomas, was mid-scroll on his phone, half listening to a supplier's voicemail. He looked up, and the blood drained from his face. "Mr. Statham, sir." "I didn't know you were coming in today." Jason nodded once, calm. "That's the idea." Thomas stood up so fast his chair bumped the wall. "Is everything all right?" Jason closed the door behind him. "We got a culture problem." Thomas blinked. "Sir?" Jason's voice was even, but it hit like gravel on glass. "When did we start treating people by the size of their wallet instead of the weight of their character?" The manager swallowed hard. I'm not sure what you mean." Jason didn't sit, just stood there, arms crossed. "Pull up the last 2 months of guest complaints. I want names, incidents, and I want to know how many were ignored." Thomas fumbled for his tablet. "Of course. Just give me a second to log in." Jason walked the office slowly, eyes landing on plaques, awards, framed Instagram posts of the restaurant's top-tier clientele. Glossy smiles, champagne towers. Nothing real. "What about employee turnover?" Jason asked, low and steady. "We've lost 5 servers in a month. 2 hostesses, a sous chef. Any idea why?" Thomas hesitated. "High-pressure environment. Standard industry stuff." Jason turned. "You sure it's not because some of your senior staff treat this place like a runway, not a restaurant?" The silence that followed was answer enough. Meanwhile, out on the floor, Britt was back at the influencer table, laughing like she'd just won something. "Seriously, you guys, some people walk in here dressed like they're heading to a rodeo and think they're going to fit in. I can't." The couple laughed politely, more interested in their phones and her jokes. But Britt was performing. For them. For herself. Nearby, Lena cleared plates quietly from a table where an older couple sat in silence. The woman looked uncomfortable. Her husband looked embarrassed. They'd clearly been given minimal attention all evening. Lena paused. Her eyes moved slowly across the room, past Britt's show, past the buzz, toward the back hallway. Something tugged at her. She slipped away, ducking through the kitchen and into the staff corridor, just in time to see the office door ajar. Jason's voice floated out. "Respect doesn't start at the table. It starts in the back room." Lena knocked lightly, peeking in. "Mr. Statham?" Jason turned. For the first time, his eyes softened. "Lena, right?" She nodded, nervous but steady. I just wanted to say I'm sorry. For how you were treated. That's not how we're supposed to be." Jason looked at her. "You ever treat anyone like that?" "No, sir." "Why not?" Lena hesitated, then spoke softly. "Because you never know who someone really is until it's too late to make it right." Jason smiled gently. "Good answer." He glanced back at Thomas. "Keep her. Promote her. We need more eyes like that." Lena stepped out as quietly as she'd come in. Jason looked at the manager one more time. "Don't tell anyone I'm here yet. I want to finish my meal. At my table. With my original server." Thomas looked terrified. "You mean Britt?" Jason didn't answer. He just walked back into the kitchen, through the chaos of plated desserts and garnishes, and stepped back into the dining room like nothing had happened. The influencers were filming their risotto. Britt spotted Jason returning to his seat and gave a dramatic sigh, flipping her hair as she approached. "Back again?" she asked with a roll of her eyes. "You must really like punishment." Jason looked up slowly. "I've learned a lot tonight," he said. "Thanks to you." She stared at him, confused. "You're welcome?" He turned back to his cup. "Don't worry. You'll understand soon." She laughed uncomfortably and walked away, brushing him off like lint on her sleeve. But something in his voice made her glance back. A tingle of something she couldn't name yet. And in the far corner, Lena watched it all. Quiet, still, and absolutely certain. Something was about to change. The dinner crowd had thickened. Soft jazz floated through the air like perfume, and silverware clinked against porcelain in a symphony of curated elegance. Britt smoothed her apron and brushed her hair behind one ear, scanning the room like she owned it. Jason Statham sat quietly in his corner, untouched coffee in front of him, gaze steady and unreadable. She sauntered over one more time, arms crossed. "You're not really eating, you know. Some of us get rated on turnover time." Jason stood up. Not fast, not loud, just final. At that moment, the restaurant manager, Thomas, stepped into the dining room, flanked by two other suited staff members. He held a small remote in his hand, and with a click, the background music faded to a hush. "Ladies and gentlemen," Thomas said, clearing his throat, "your attention for just a moment, please. We'd like to introduce someone important." Britt rolled her eyes, barely listening. Just another influencer or investor getting their ego fluffed. She turned back toward the influencer table, and then froze. Thomas motioned toward Jason. "This is Mr. Jason Statham, owner of Verger." The dining room went completely still. Forks paused midair. Conversations evaporated. Jason stepped forward slowly, nodding once toward the guests. All eyes on him. Britt's face drained of color, like someone pulled a cord on her spotlight. Her jaw dropped. She looked back and forth between Jason and the manager, like she was trying to wake up from a bad dream. Jason didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. "I built this restaurant with one rule," he said, eyes locked on the room. "Everyone who walks through that door deserves dignity, whether they drive a Rolls or ride a bus." Whispers broke out across the tables. Someone gasped. The older couple, Lena, had helped sat up straighter. Jason turned, looking directly at Britt now. "And tonight, someone on staff made it very clear that rule was broken." Britt's voice finally returned, but barely. I didn't know who you were." Jason's words hit like thunder after lightning. "You shouldn't have to." Gasp again. The influencers put their phones down. Jason stepped closer. Not angry, just steady. "You looked at my clothes, heard my voice, and decided what I was worth. That's not service. That's judgment. And it ends tonight." Britt started to stammer. I didn't mean... Look, it was just banter. I didn't..." Jason cut in, calm as a still lake. "You mocked me, ignored me, laughed about me to other staff, all while wearing the name of a restaurant built on respect. So now, you're to do what you were supposed to do from the beginning." She blinked. "What do you mean?" "You're going to serve me." The room held its breath. "You're to take my order, bring my meal, top off my drink, professionally. No sarcasm, no shortcuts, just like every other guest here. And everyone's going to watch. Not to shame you, but to remind every person in this room what it should look like when you earn back the trust you throw away." Britt's hands trembled. "Why, yes, of course." She reached for her notepad like it weighed 50 pounds. Her voice cracked. What would you like, sir?" Jason gave her a look she couldn't quite read. Maybe pity, maybe disappointment, maybe something deeper. "The Wagyu tartare with saffron foam," he said. "Since apparently it is my thing." Some guests chuckled quietly, unsure they were allowed to. The tension broke, but only slightly. Britt scribbled the order and walked off, eyes burning, shoulders hunched. Not because she was embarrassed, but because, for the first time, she realized what it meant to be truly seen. Jason turned to Thomas. "Make sure the kitchen does it right. No shortcuts tonight. Not for anyone." The manager nodded. Jason returned to his seat. The dining room began to move again, conversations low and reverent, like church after confession. No one looked at Jason the same, not because of his fame, but because of the clarity he brought with him. Lena stepped over and quietly refilled his water. She didn't say a word. Jason nodded at her. "Thank you." Across the room, the influencer couple was now whispering, uncomfortable, fidgeting. They motioned for their check early. Britt passed them on her way to the kitchen. Neither made eye contact. Jason sat back in his chair, one leg crossed over the other, gaze steady as always. He didn't need a crown to own the room. He was the room. If you were in that dining room, would you clap, stay quiet, or say something to Britt. Drop your honest reaction in the comments. We want to hear your voice in this story. Britt disappeared into the kitchen like smoke retreating into shadows. But there was no hiding from the weight now pressing on her shoulders. In the back, chefs paused. Dishwashers stopped clattering. Everyone had heard. "Is it true?" one of the line cooks asked quietly. She nodded. "It's him. It's really him." But the worst part wasn't that she'd insulted the owner. It was that she'd treated another human being like a prop in a performance. And now the curtain had ripped wide open. She plated the tartare herself, hands shaking slightly. Every motion was careful, intentional, no shortcuts. For once, she wasn't trying to impress. She was trying to make it right. Out in the dining room, the atmosphere had changed. It wasn't tension anymore. It was attention. Every guest leaned slightly toward Jason's table, but not out of spectacle, out of something deeper. Respect. He sat like a mountain, unshaken, unmoved, yet commanding the entire skyline of the moment. Britt approached his table again, this time with the plate held carefully in both hands like an offering. Her voice dropped to a whisper. Wagyu tartare, saffron foam, house-cured lemon. Jason looked up, steady. "You remembered." She nodded. "I made it myself." Watched every step. Jason gestured for her to set it down. She did, gently. "Anything else I can get you?" she asked. "Yes," Jason said, his voice quiet but certain. "Tell me something." Her eyes flicked to his. "What?" "When did you stop seeing people?" She flinched, not from anger, not from accusation, but because the question reached into the part of her that had been avoiding mirrors. "I don't know," she said honestly. "I think maybe I started trying too hard to be noticed and forgot to actually notice anyone else." Jason nodded slowly. Service isn't performance. It's presence. And it doesn't matter if you're handing someone a napkin or $1 million deal. Everyone wants to be seen. She looked down. "I was wrong. About all of it." Jason tapped the edge of his plate, then looked up at her one final time, then prove it wasn't permanent. Britt stepped back silently. She didn't need applause. She didn't deserve pity. What she had now was a mirror and the responsibility to face it. Jason took a bite of the dish, closed his eyes, let the flavors settle, then nodded once. Perfect. Whispers floated through the restaurant, but not of gossip, of awakening. Staff adjusted their tone. Servers checked in on guests they'd been ignoring. Lena, now moving with quiet authority, helped a nervous new server reset a table with real grace. Everything had shifted, but Jason wasn't done. He stood up again, this time not to expose, but to elevate. "To everyone here tonight," he said to the guests, "you came for a meal, and you got one. But maybe, without knowing it, we also shared something more important." People sat straighter, like school children sensing a lesson. This restaurant was built on one thing, value. Not price, not prestige, but the kind of value that doesn't wear a suit or post about online. He looked toward Lena. That means listening. Then toward Thomas. That means leading. Then finally back to Britt. And sometimes that means learning. Britt's eyes brimmed, but she didn't look away this time. Jason exhaled once. "We all mess up. What matters is what we do the minute we see it." With that, he returned to his seat, finished the last bite of his dish, and set his napkin down neatly on the table. No mic drop. No walk-off. Just a man who had said what needed to be said. The guests applauded, not loud or theatrical, but real, a rising rhythm of respect. Some stood. Others simply nodded in his direction, like salutes without words. Jason didn't smile, but his eyes softened. For the first time that night, he didn't feel like a stranger in his own house. The next morning, the restaurant was quieter than usual. Rain tapped lightly on the windows, like the sky itself had paused to reflect. Jason returned, not in disguise, not undercover, just himself. No cameras, no press, just Jason Statham, walking back into the space he'd built, where a lesson had just been planted the night before. And he wasn't there to tear down, he was there to rebuild. He met the entire staff in the private dining room, servers, hosts, kitchen crew, dishwashers. Everyone. The silence was heavy until Jason spoke. No yelling today, he began. No punishments. Just truth. He walked slowly, not pacing, just moving with presence. Most of you didn't know I was here last night. That was the point. I needed to feel what our guests feel when no one's looking. He paused, letting that settle. There are places that serve great food and places that serve great people. This was supposed to be both. His eyes moved toward Britt, who sat at the edge of the group, hands folded tightly in her lap. She didn't look away. I'm not here to fire anyone, Jason continued, because sometimes the hardest lesson is living with what you almost lost. A few heads turned toward Britt, then back to Jason. But we will change, he said, voice stronger now. Starting today, no more two-faced service. No more judging shoes, accents, or table size. Every person who walks through those doors is royalty until they prove otherwise. There was a beat of silence, then quiet nods, some eyes wide with relief, others with resolve. Then Jason addressed Britt directly. You've got a choice. She stood slowly. Anything. I'll do anything to make it right. Jason nodded. Good, because here's what you're going to do. He handed her a small, handwritten card, an address. Take a week. Go to that place. It's a shelter on the south side that feeds anyone who walks in, no questions, no judgments. You'll shadow their staff. Serve people who don't leave tips. Listen more than you speak. Then you'll come back here with a letter. Britt looked at the card like it held more weight than a paycheck. A letter? She asked softly. Jason nodded. Of apology, but not to me, to the people you've overlooked. Every table you dismissed. Every voice you ignored. She nodded, eyes glassy. Yes, I'll do it. Jason turned toward Lena next. And you? Lena stiffened. Yes, sir. You're not just a good server. You're a good leader. You're being promoted to team lead. Starting now, I want the whole floor to feel like your section. Lena blinked. I don't know what to say. Jason smiled gently. Say yes, then show them how it's done. She nodded once, tearfully. Yes. With that, Jason walked out. No applause. No ceremony. Just the ripple of something real finally starting to spread. By the time the doors opened for dinner that evening, Verger wasn't just another rooftop hotspot. It was becoming something new. Or maybe just becoming what was always meant to be. 3 weeks later, the world kept spinning. But something inside Verger had quietly changed. The lighting hadn't shifted. The marble floors were still polished. The rooftop view still lit the skyline like a dream. But now, the air felt warmer, softer, like the place had finally learned how to breathe. Britt returned, just like she said she would. She wasn't dressed for optics this time. No false lashes. No click-ready smile. Just a woman who'd walked through a different kind of fire and let it burn away what didn't belong. She handed Jason a plain envelope. He opened it without a word. Inside was a letter, handwritten. No fluff. No excuses. It was raw. Human. The kind of apology that doesn't beg for forgiveness. It simply owns the weight of harm done. She wrote about a man with dirt under his nails who told her thank you like it was a prayer. She wrote about a woman with 3 children and no shoes who still tipped with a smile. She wrote, finally, about herself. I used to think power was being noticed, the letter said. But now I know it's choosing to notice others. Jason folded the paper gently and looked up. No one's perfect, he said quietly. But some people learn in time to matter. She didn't ask for her job back. She didn't need to. He simply nodded. Go on. Your section's waiting. She walked into the dining room, not with pride, but with purpose. That night, a man in worn jeans and tired eyes came in alone. Ordered soup. Jason watched as Britt served him like he was a king. No camera rolling. Just a soul doing what she should have done from the start. Lena passed by, now training a new server, showing them how to fold napkins the way Jason liked. Tight corners, soft edges. Thomas no longer checked the stock prices on his phone during dinner rush. He checked in with the dishwasher. And Jason? He still came by unannounced. still ordered coffee, still wore the boots she once mocked. But now, the staff smiled when they saw him, not because he was famous, because he had reminded them what the place really stood for. Not wealth, not status, but worth. And as Jason sat back at his usual table, quiet and unseen again, he let himself feel it. The restaurant wasn't just his anymore. It belonged to everyone. Status fades. Character lasts. And in the end, the only thing worth owning is who you are when no one's watching.